Hello and welcome to Marcos and James, the Lisbon Pirates. We're here this morning talking with Tiago and Mark, and our goal this morning is just to do an introduction podcast and talk a little bit about our city of Lisbon, maybe introduce ourselves, and just continue the conversation.
Yeah.
So, Tiago, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. So, this is my very first time uh, trying to say something meaningful in English. And so it's going to be hard for me, but I think, I think it can be fun.
I don't think this is the first time you've said something meaningful in English. Tiago has spoken in English before. Have you ever preached in English?
Yeah, I preached once.
Okay.
I preached once. So, and the main idea, and Mark will be spending a lot of time correcting my English, and so I think this can be one of the funny things about this podcast. If you are an English-speaking person, you can spend some time laughing from the mistakes that I'm going to make. I don't know if we say make mistakes or do
Yeah.
mistakes.
You can make mistakes.
Yeah, I can make mistakes. Definitely, I
I
can.
think the funny thing about this is that usually the shoe is on the other foot. So I'm the one that's getting corrected in Portuguese all the time,
Yeah.
and you guys are laughing at me. So now I get to laugh a little bit at you, right?
It's revenge time
That's
for
right.
Mark.
That's right.
Mark, and can you explain a little bit how does something like this happen? An American guy, an American family living in Lisbon. Uh, Tell us something about how did it happen for you?
Yeah, so it's kind of a crazy story, but if I could summarize it in maybe a phrase or two, it really would be that we felt convicted about a decade ago, about 9 years ago, that God was calling us to come to this country and to give our lives and to serve this country and to work alongside the local church. And so, I mean, I'm a pastor, and so that's kind of my function as a pastor and a missionary. And so that's what we're doing here. And I think one of the neatest things about what we're doing here is that we get to work alongside the local church, and our local church is the Igreja de Lapa, Lapa Church. And so God has just over the past couple of years used our family, this opportunity that we've had to work alongside you guys.
Yeah. I would say that for Portuguese people, and right now I'm talking about all kinds of Portuguese people, believers and non-believers, the idea of God calling you to be in a country like Portugal can be very strange.
It's strange.
Yeah.
In fact, yesterday I was getting my hair cut, and the guy that's cutting my hair, Diogo, he asked me that very thing. He said, "I love America. All I want to do is go to America. Why did you come here?" So he couldn't figure it out.
And did you say that God called
I
you?
said, yeah.
And how did he reacted to? How did he react to that?
He said, "Okay, okay. And do you like it here?" And of course, we say we love it here. And so it's interesting because people are convinced about their own country based on our experiences. When we say we love it here, we love the food, we love the people, we love the beach, we love the culture, then people kind of realize, yeah, we do love it here.
Yeah.
But
Because you're around here for some time now, and for us Portuguese people, the idea of being so upfront about loving our own country, it's difficult. It's not something so natural for us to be so okay with our own country. So every time someone comes from the outside and says that he's just loving the country, in a way, we enjoy listening to people say they love our country, but in a way, we kind of it can be a little bit awkward. Have you ever felt something like this when you say good things about Portugal, that Portuguese people can react in a strange way?
yeah, oh, absolutely, yeah. I think first they're a little shocked that we would have such a great experience, and they want to know why. And so they ask us a lot of questions about, well, what do you like, and why do you like that? But I think in general, people really appreciate it. They really respect the idea that a foreigner could come to their country and love it so much that they'd want to stay and put their kids in their schools and integrate into life here.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the positive things. But yeah, there's definitely a little bit of awkwardness in the beginning of people wanting to know, well, why would you come here to this country? We're such a small country. But I think in the end, they love it. They love that we love it.
I don't know. I'm a Portuguese guy, so I'm not that balanced talking about Portugal. But generally, I would say that we are kind of okay, we Portuguese people, but we lack some self-esteem. So, do you agree with that? Do you think that we lack self-esteem? Or...
Well, way to put me on the spot. Are you saying that Portuguese have a little man syndrome? Is that what it is? Napoleon syndrome?
How did you say little man syndrome?
Little man syndrome.
I've never heard that.
Yeah.
It's good. I don't know. Yeah, I just wanted to know your opinion because this is something that every time I go to another country, I realize that we Portuguese people have lots of good things, but we are not that comfortable with our own qualities. I don't know if this makes sense.
Right. No, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so initially, I think maybe that's what comes across first, and so maybe it's a little bit of a pessimistic thought or thinking, oh, we're not that great. But I think the interesting thing is, as we get talking and we talk about the great things that Portugal has done or the great things that Portugal has at this moment, I think the Portuguese people are also very proud of who they are. And so once that starts to come out, it bubbles up. And then they are very proud of who they are and their food and their culture. And because it's an amazing culture. It's an amazing culture that can import itself out, but also receive culture as well. And you see that. You see that in the way that they embrace language, the way that they embrace other people and culture. And so it becomes a very beautiful thing. But yeah, initially maybe they're a little bit reserved about putting that out there.
Yeah, and I find it a little ironic that we need some foreign help so we can get to the point of enjoying ourselves.
Right.
Yeah, it's probably it's almost a religious paradox about us. I don't know. But one of the things that I would like for you to explain is that why the name Pirates. And the thing is, the last sermon this past Sunday, Mark preached the sermon, and at some point he used this pirates illustration. And Mark, can you tell us a little bit more about the pirates illustration that you talked about during the sermon?
Sure, and I'll jump in there, and then after that I want you to just explain a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I know you're famous, so you don't have to explain anything.
I'm very rich and very
but if we introduce you on the podcast as James, then people might not remember who you are. So on Sunday, it was Easter, of course, and we were. I had the opportunity to preach, and so just preaching from John chapter 19, verse 30, and the phrase "it is finished," and of course that phrase in Greek is tetelestai, and so just kind of looking at the root of the word and the telos and all that's kind of in that word.
And this is a good thing because you're an American, but you know how to speak in Portuguese. Generally, you speak in Portuguese, but you know also about biblical Greek.
Right.
So
right.
yeah.
Yeah, so just kind of bringing those words, the richness of the word out, and we kind of talked about telos and telescope being part of the root. Telos is in telescope, and then just kind of using the image of the pirates, right? The pirates that would use the telescope to be able to see something so clearly, and that word being something that brings us so clearly in line with what the purpose of what Jesus was accomplishing on the cross. So. It's fun to see how those words are so rich in the Bible and how we can study them and bring them out and see how they apply to our lives even today. So I want you to tell us, as a pastor of the church, as in Igreja de Lapa, as Lapa Church, just tell us a little bit about who you are and what your journey has been over these years.
Yeah. God willing, I'll be 40 like you. You're going to be 40 during this year, and what would I say? I'll just say that I'm one of the pastors here at Igreja da Lapa. The full name is Igreja Evangélica Batista Segunda Igreja Evangélica Batista de Lisboa, Second Baptist Church of Lisbon, and we've been around here for 4 years now, but we began this new church about 10 years ago. And yeah, I love, I also love rock and roll. So since I was a kid, I was in these punk rock bands, and I never stopped doing that. Probably I should, but but it just happened this way. And in the last 4 years, um, I've been writing some books also. So yeah, the way that I like to introduce myself is I'm all about the word of God preached, but the written word, writing books and singing songs. So the word when we sing it also. And yeah, my name is James. Here in this podcast, I'm James. I'm Tiago Cavaco. And because of our, we had a prime minister called Cavaco Silva. Every time I say that I'm Cavaco, I have to explain that I'm not related to him. But yeah.
Was he a prime minister or a president?
Yeah, he was prime minister
first?
in the late 80s and the beginning of the 90s, and then he became president 10 years after, I think. Yeah.
Wow.
But when I was a little kid when Cavaco Silva became prime minister, and the name Cavaco is not there. Yeah, it's not that common. But so then he became prime minister, and every time
Do people joke with you?
Yeah, every time. Even today, today. And I was not that fond of Cavaco Silva, but then I became. I grew. It grew some admiration. Would you say that in English? Yeah, correct me.
Maybe not.
Yeah. How would you say that? Yeah, I began having some admiration
for him.
Yeah. And so probably we'll get a way to get Cavaco Silva to in some of these podcasts.
We can invite him.
We can invite everyone.
Know. Yeah, that would be fascinating because that's one thing I've never quite understood about life in Portugal is politics.
Yeah,
because politics are so different here.
Why? Yeah, definitely.
And so one podcast maybe we need to talk about faith in the city with politics.
Yes.
Because it's fascinating here because it's very different. Than where I come from.
Yeah, and they explain because nowadays every American living in Europe, at least the ones I know, they try when they are Christians, evangelical Christians, they really try to be careful talking about all things politics.
Oh, absolutely. I think because it's so polarizing.
Yeah.
Lately, at least lately. And on our first podcast, we're not going to mention you know who, right?
Yeah.
Because I already have to talk about this all the time because people, that's the first question. They find out I'm an American and they want to know. What do you think about, I'm not even going to say his name.
Yeah.
Right? It's not even worth
it. The name that we are not allowed to
That's right. The name we're not allowed to speak about. So, so maybe that'll be a podcast in the future.
Yeah.
Politics.
Yeah.
The difference between maybe there and here.
But being able not to say the name, how do you navigate through these waters?
Yeah, it's difficult because people want to talk about it, and I think one of the things that we've tried really really hard to do is not to take positions with politicians, and I think as a believer we can talk about the issues, we can talk about the important topics without necessarily jumping in bed with one side or the other. And I think that's for us, that's what we always want to do, is we want to highlight what are the biblical issues that we need to be talking about. Life and preserving life and standing up for the poor and the helpless and the defenseless and all that without necessarily waving our flag and jumping in with a politician or a party or something like that.
It doesn't make you mad that when listening to the Portuguese press talking about American politics and evangelical Christians, people get their ideas so prematurely. I don't know if you would say it like this, but about evangelicals and right-wing, crazy religious people. Do you feel something like a kind of, how do you say, preconceito?
Like a preconceived notion.
It's when people know that you're an American in evangelical Christian.
And I think that's the challenge is we live in a world where the soundbite rules. And so people get their information from a soundbite on TV. And so, and I think that's one of the hard things about life today and the news, media, and all this kind of stuff is that we base everything on a 30-second clip or a soundbite. And so everything people hear, they make assumptions or judgments on people or groups or whatever it is based on that. And I think that's the hard part is that people don't take the time to really investigate or to research or to think through what they believe about a certain group or a people or an issue or a topic. And so that's tough because then people are, they put that on you and they expect, oh, well, you're that kind of person that I heard about on TV. And so that's a challenge, but,
and
I assume it.
That's one of the reasons we began this podcast, because I really, and I can say this, I'm a Portuguese guy, so I really find the Portuguese media depressing. And so we began the best thing in Portuguese media, which is Marcos and James.
That's right. That is the best in Portuguese media.
And one of the ideas is to get Portuguese guys really coming to this podcast, and they will have to talk in English.
Absolutely.
And it can be lots of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So what are we going to do on this podcast?
Yeah.
What are we going to talk about?
I don't know. We already talked about faith and politics, so all kinds of difficult issues. But I know one of the good things that you plan to talk about. It's about these things that we think about ourselves in Lisbon, and let's fact. How would you say fact check?
Fact check. Yeah. So
please do it.
I want to do this because so everybody knows that one of the first things people look at for information is Wikipedia.
Yeah.
And so let me ask you: do you think Wikipedia is a reliable source of information?
Yeah. This gets me to confession of sins because no pastor will confess that he went to the Wikipedia while preparing his sermon, but everyone does that.
Everybody consults it.
So I don't know if I tried to go to the Wikipedia for a first impression about things, and then but lots of times I really enjoy reading some Wikipedia pages.
I love reading it. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm just my curiosity is how accurate is it? Okay, so here we are. I'm pulling up a page. Yeah. The Wikipedia page for Lisbon. And so we're gonna ask Tiago, or should I say James? We're gonna ask James some questions about his own city to see if Wikipedia is right.
Yeah.
Okay. So some of them are pretty standard. So for instance, it says it's the capital and largest city of Portugal. That's true.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Now here's one question I have. It says it's one of the oldest cities in Western Europe. Is that true?
I believe it is. Do you know that Lisbon comes from this myth about, how do you say Ulysses in English? The Greek, and of course it's a myth, but and then it's the idea. At least my teacher when I was a kid, she taught me this. It came from Olisipo, so something like the city of Ulysses, and he came here, and it came from Olisipo, and then it got to Lisboa. But I believe it's pretty old. Yeah, I believe.
Well, I think Wikipedia confirms that. So, look, I mean, it's confirming exactly. Yeah, we've got it.
Yeah. So this is all. Yeah.
So who were the first people to come to Lisbon? Do you think? I mean, obviously the people that were here already, but who came first?
Yeah.
And kind of settled Lisbon.
I don't know, man. Now everyone will know that I'm a pretty ignorant guy. And the first, I don't know, we would learn in school about the Cartagineses. I don't know how do you say that, but all the people from Mediterranean, and they would come here. And of course, later, Roman people were here, and so we were a part of the Roman Empire. But before that, I'm not that sure.
Wikipedia says the Phoenicians. Is that right?
I always mix Phoenicians with Cartagineses. How do you say Cartagineses in English?
I have no idea.
Yeah, from Carthago.
See, this is the deep dark secret you're going to find out is that there are things that I don't know in English.
Yeah, that's shocking. That's shocking.
Okay, so there's one question I had that I thought was fascinating, and it talked about Lisbon and what people call it, and so I wanted to ask you if these were correct because it seems a little funny. Yeah, I'm trying to find it. Anyway, it says that Lisbon was known as the city of.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So is Lisbon known for being the city of something?
Yeah, yeah. Lots of times people talk about Lisbon, about a city where the light is different from any other place. I don't know, but I'm not a frequent traveler, but yeah, the tourists will say great things about our light, and generally when you talk about the city of lights, we are thinking about Paris, and I love Paris when I was there, but yeah, but in a way I think we can call Lisbon city of light also.
City of light, I've heard that. How about the city of seven hills?
Yeah, do you know that Rome is also the city of seven hills?
Oh, really?
I'm reading right now a great book. It's called SPQR, Mary Beard. Do you say Beard? Yeah, it's Beard.
That's
Yeah,
right.
it's her name. And so I'm reading that book because me and my wife Anna Ruth, we were in Rome this last November, and we really love the city. And so, and I'm reading this book right now. And Rome, I think probably before Lisbon, is the city of the seven hills also.
Okay.
So it was shocking for me to know that.
That's fascinating.
Because I thought it was only, I don't know where the hills are, but exactly. But if you go to Castelo de São Jorge,
that you definitely feel like you're going either up or down when you're right.
Yeah.
And of course the Baixa, the low part of the city, you either have to go down or go up.
Yeah.
So.
And one of the good things about New York in the United States, it's such a big city, but it's so, how do you say, plan?
It's flat.
Yeah, it's flat, so it's
easy to walk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lisbon.
I would say it's harder to walk in Lisbon.
Yeah, it's harder.
Well, and not only
although
that,
it's a small city, but it's harder.
Okay, not only that. Okay, the cobblestones are a little bit harder to walk on. Okay, but
the cobblestones, it's the pedras da calçada.
Exactly. Cobblestones.
Because it comes from cobalt, probably the kind of rock.
Oh, I have no idea. see what I'm saying? I have no idea.
Please, someone go check if cobblestones comes from the cobalt rock.
Somebody check and leave a comment.
Yeah, please.
On whether or not it comes from that word. Okay. And
but you were saying because it's harder to walk.
So it's hard to walk on the cobblestones. Yeah. But then the other thing that's hard is sometimes there's no sidewalks.
Yeah.
So like sometimes there's just a road, and Portuguese drivers are going at 100 kilometers an hour, right? And there's like no space on the side of the road.
It's a kind of unwritten law that you have to know how to.
So here's a good question for you. Why is it that in Portugal when you're walking, and most people don't walk, that's the interesting thing. You and me, we would like to walk. When you're walking, you're safe in the crosswalk, but it's open season when you're in the road, in the middle of the road, right? Have you noticed that? Like Portuguese drivers, they want to run you down.
I don't notice that because for me it's life as usual. So, but sometimes when you go to other places, then But how is it for you? Do you remember the first time walking through Lisbon?
Oh, yeah.
How did you feel? How did you feel about? How was for you a kind of open season?
This is how I like to describe it. And I still believe this. Since the day one that we got here. I think what it is organized chaos. Right? Right? Organized chaos. So when people come here, they think, oh my goodness, it's chaos. It's crazy. There's no systems. There's no rules. There's nothing. I don't believe that. I believe that it's organized in the sense there are rules. There are certain things that you have to adhere by. You have to obey. But it is chaos all the time. So, for instance, parking. It seems like you can park anywhere. But that's not true. Because people get their car booted. They get their car towed. Ask my friend Tracy Richardson. He got his car towed because he parked in the wrong place.
That's good.
I mean,
Do you know? Right now, I'm a little bit biased because I spent almost 3 weeks in Brazil, and Rome. It's definitely crazy.
Right.
And so, to be honest, when I came back. When I came back to Lisbon, I just felt the old cliche that people say about Portuguese people, that we are very serene. Do you say serene? Yeah,
Peaceful,
yeah,
sure.
peaceful. Yeah. Because Brazil, it can be even more crazy.
See, and I think that's interesting. It's perspective.
Yeah.
It depends on your perspective. If you come from Brazil, you think, wow, Portugal's calm and easy. I think if you came from Northern Europe or the United States or Canada to Portugal, you'd probably go, oh my goodness, this is crazy.
And I'm used to hear people saying that we're kind of crazy. If you come from northern places in Europe or even in the United States, probably, I think you're right. But you said something that for me it's very interesting about organized chaos, because I would say that inside of us we probably we are kind of I don't know if we feel very peaceful about the way about life in general.
Right.
And in that sense, I would say that Portuguese people don't feel life as very easy to understand. But the way that we behave, it's not we. I don't know. It's something about us, but we try to be. Not that wild about our restlessness thinking about life. I don't know if this makes sense.
No, I think you're right. And I think that the evidence of that is the way that the Portuguese express themselves. I think they are intellectual people, amazing thinkers, very, very deep in that sense, but they're not very loud in the way they express. And when you went to Brazil, you noticed a huge difference, right?
Yeah.
The way that the Portuguese would express, they're much more reserved, maybe a little bit more withdrawn, until you get to know them.
Yes.
And then they're just as loud as everybody else, right?
When you came during the first years, what were the more difficult things about understanding these about us Portuguese people?
Yeah, there's so much, because as we all know, when you go from one culture to another, you become a learner. I remember feeling like I was a helpless baby in the beginning, not only because I didn't speak the language, but because you didn't know what the cues were. And so it was very difficult to understand how Portuguese people thought, or what they did, or why they did it, or what my response was as a foreigner living in this place, trying to make friends or understand things. And I think, we made a lot of mistakes, and we still make a lot of mistakes. One of the things that I felt in the beginning, especially as difficult as it was, the one thing is that the Portuguese people are very gracious, grace-giving. And so it didn't matter how many mistakes we made, or that we didn't understand a lot of things about the culture. They loved the fact that we were trying.
Yes.
We tried to speak their language. We tried to understand their culture. And that was everything.
Do you know, I was talking to René Broyel. He's a friend of ours. He pastors this evangelical church in Rome, in Italy, and he says that whenever he makes a mistake speaking in Italian, people will correct him.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the things that generally. It's funny because we are not that quick to correct someone who's trying hard to talk in our language. In a way, we will not correct because we feel so, in some way, we feel moved when we meet someone coming from another culture, like an American guy, trying to speak our language. So we will not go, Mark, you said it wrong, because we feel fascinated about you coming from the U.S. to this small country, and I think you're right. Probably this is something good about us Portuguese people. But tell us one more thing, one more difficult thing, and just to keep you guys knowing that one of the funniest funniest
Yeah.
videos, yeah, that we have in our. The funnier and funniest always makes me pause.
Right.
But one of the great things we have in our YouTube account, it's this video of Mark and Hannah, his wife, talking about being an American family in Portugal, and you definitely have to check that out. But tell us one of the things that it was hard for you to understand when you were getting here.
Well, yeah, there's tons. Just
We'll
there's so many. There's so many.
do a lot of podcasts.
Yeah, we should do one podcast of just the funny mistakes we made.
Yeah.
And we can have a good laugh about that. Yeah, I would say, just trying to think of one or two examples. I think that one of the difficult things was we weren't insiders. Okay, so we're outsiders. And so one of the hard things was always that when people talk and communicate, they forget that you don't know the context. And let me just use one that happened a couple of years ago with you. For every Easter we have the sunrise service that we meet down by the river.
Yeah.
And so the first time that we wanted to go to the sunrise service, you said it's right by caffeine.
Yeah, caffeine. Yeah.
But the way that you say that, it sounded like you were talking about caffeine, right? So I thought,
because
right.
That's the purpose of the name that they chose for the.
Yeah, exactly. So here I'm thinking, like, what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to drink coffee before we come? Like, where is this place? Like, I don't know where we're supposed to go, right? And so later, of course, I find out that it's Cafe Inn, right? And it's a location.
Yeah, it was my fault because doing the right pronunciation of English words,
But isn't it interesting though? I think that's an interesting commentary just on just life in general. Is that a lot of times we assume that we know that we're communicating because we're always communicating with the same people over and over and over, and all of a sudden when a foreigner comes, and it's not your fault at all. It's actually our responsibility to learn the language and learn it well, and learn the context and learn the culture. But I think even like in what we do as the church and stuff, we forget that there are those that come from outside. And so we have to labor very diligently to make sure that people that are coming from a different context understand very clearly what the gospel message is or what we're doing or who Jesus is. Because isn't that interesting? It's interesting to know that a lot of times we assume that people know, but we make that mistake of not explaining or going beyond.
And that's a very gracious thing that's been happening in our church since you and your family came. And again, it's a kind of ironic thing because sometimes you need someone coming from the outside to correct the things that you've been doing wrong all your life. And this is one of the great things, Mark, that you bring. In a way, your eyes are more opened to things that we can be doing wrong in Portugal. And I'm not talking only about things inside a church. I'm talking in general. And so for us, I would like for you to share one of the things that when you got inside Baptist churches, Portuguese Baptist churches, one of the things that you felt that probably wasn't helping that much, welcoming people from the outside.
Yeah, that was always very difficult, and I think the ironic thing was that people felt they were being very welcoming. But in fact, it wasn't very welcoming. It was very difficult to break into that community, and imagine how difficult it would be for somebody that wasn't a believer. If it was hard for us coming in from a different culture, but being believers and understanding the Christian culture, imagine how much harder it is for somebody to come in from just the culture at large. And so that was the hard part, is not feeling very welcomed. But I will say this, as you say, there are things that need to be corrected in your own culture. One of the things that I think God has used in our lives is that as we've come from a different culture and come to this culture, He has just graciously exposed our ways of doing things and the wrong things that we've done and the things that need to be corrected and gently changed and tweaked. And I think this is a beautiful thing about how the gospel works. is that as we do this together, we see that there are things about our culture, both of our cultures, that need to change.
Yes.
Things that definitely need to be thrown away, things that need to be highlighted, but then things that need to come under the submission or the guidance of the Holy Spirit with the gospel. So
Yes.
for us, it's been a privilege and a pleasure to see how God has changed us and molded us to you in the church here, at the same time
Yes.
using us to help affect change too. So it's a beautiful thing.
Yes, it really is a fruit of the gospel, because in a way, at least this is our experience from these last years. In a way, sometimes you need American people so that Portuguese people can love Jesus more. It really works like this, because it was God's plan that a great multitude coming from all kinds of peoples um, could join God in the love relationship that He already had, being Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. And so, do you know that when I travel, I've been understanding this better. This universal thing about the church. You need very different people to show you from your own culture the ways that you are not loving Christ enough. So this is one of the things that gets things really exciting here at Igreja de Lapa, I believe, is receiving people from other cultures. And because of that, because you're receiving people from other cultures, you are being helped knowing God better. I don't know if this makes sense, but the gospel is a little bit about this also.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know for how long we've been talking.
I have no idea.
Yeah, 36 minutes.
Did we do well? Did we do okay?
Yeah, I don't know. Listeners, you'll have to give us some feedback. Yeah.
I think it'd be great. Comment away. Yeah. Let us know what we can improve, what we can do better. And I think even for the future, we've got some great ideas for this podcast, even to the point where we're going to ask listeners to suggest a theme or suggest a question, have a question. And we'd love to respond to questions or talk about a theme that people are interested in. And I think one thing about this podcast, the neat thing is we're going to talk about Lisbon. We're going to talk about our church. We're going to talk about faith in the city. We're going to talk about everything from our perspective, two pastors, one American, one Portuguese. And I think it's going to be great.
And I hope for all the listeners who are non-believers, you can cope. You can cope with our way of doing things, because in a way we're talking about Lisbon to get you into religion, and you will say, "Oh, I'm being cheated
or trapped."
Yeah. But why do we do this? We really believe that Lisbon is a great place for God to save people. Absolutely. And so, if you don't have any kind of religious belief, and if you don't know what you really think about Christianity, at least ponder.
Think about it.
Think about how beautiful would be this concept of God bringing you to a city like Lisbon for you to get your soul saved. I really believe it's a great concept. Don't you believe that?
Absolutely. Yeah.
This is a great place for the gospel to be preached.
So at the end of the podcast, I really would like to connect people to our church, because I think that's maybe one of the best things that we could do. And so every Sunday, we meet at the Igreja de Lapa, at the church here. Give us the address so that we know where it is.
So it's Rua Pau de Bandeira, número 22. Pau de Bandeira Street, number 22.
How would we say that in English, by the way?
Pau de Bandeira, it's the flagstick.
The flagstick. So we are
Flagstick Street.
22 Flagstick Street. I never quite thought about that.
It's a good name for some product.
And so every Sunday at 11:30,
11:30,
we have our morning service, and then once a month we have an English service that we would like to do. So we've been doing that since January, and we'll continue to do it. And in fact, this next Sunday, even though it's not the last Sunday of the month, this next Sunday, we are going to do the next English service at 5 p.m.
Yeah, 5 p.m.
this Sunday.
Yeah, yeah. If you just want to check out how does church happen in a Protestant church, and you never did that, yeah, please come. Yeah, it's a great experience because you're in Lisbon, but you're inside an English-speaking experience. It's great. I've been learning how to praise God in English. Of course, the language that we'll be speaking in heaven, it will be the Portuguese. Why?
Absolutely.
Explain that.
And I'm convinced that we will speak Portuguese in heaven because it takes an eternity to learn this language. And so this is obviously God's language. It's just the verbs, the tenses, it's impossible. So
Yeah.
this
And,
is...
yeah, and for you Portuguese listeners out there, please come and try our English-speaking service because we feel very in the movie, in the movie's mood. You feel that you just, yeah. Do you remember that movie from Woody Allen where he got inside the screen? When you come to our English-speaking service, yeah, it's like that Woody Allen movie. You go inside the screen.
Well, thanks for listening. This is Marcos and James.
James, yeah.
And it's a great time to be able to talk about just lots of different things here on this podcast. So we look forward to the next time.
Yeah.
And we'll see you at Lapa.
Yeah, tune in. Yeah.